Good morning. How is everyone doing? Good, good, good. All right. Well, I'm so happy to be here. This is my first time at AdTech. This is a fantastic forum. I look forward to hearing about some of the other sessions and seeing what some of the other interesting panels that I have here as well. So my name is Atin Kulkarni, and I have the privilege to lead a capability area that sits at the intersection of marketing and insight. We call it Global Content and Media CoE. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about what we do in general at PepsiCo. And although this conference is about ad and technology, I'm not here to talk about any specific ads or acronyms and things like that. But I'm here to talk about something so fundamental to us as human beings, our love for stories, right? And if we think about why stories matter, according to TED Talk, it is something that, that fundamentally affirms who we are. It lets us connect amongst ourselves as well as some of the other folks in a way that is either real or imagined. So if you think about that, it's real or imagined, right? And I grew up here in a steady diet of Amar Chitrakatha and Indrajal comics. I'm sure that some of you did as well. And if I think about some of the stories that fascinated me at that time, and even to some extent today do, what is special about them is that I imagine to be part of that. I imagine to be part of the action. In some ways, I also imagine to be amongst those heroes, created my own, my own set of fictional stories. And if I think about how my kids do that, it's kind of the same way. So there is something magical about them, and that is what that we all love, no matter where we are, which stage of our life that we are in, where we live, and so on and so forth. So with that, the question is, what does it have to do with this? And I'm going to make a point that as much as stories and storytelling is about art and creativity, it also requires a special ingredient that is a little bit of a magic of science, a special kind of science. And that's what I'm here to make the case for as to why that is important in today's world. So I'm also sure that most of you will agree that marketing is also about having a story and being able to tell that story. Well, how do we do that? It's very simple, actually. You just hire these three people, right? Well, if it was that simple, we wouldn't have to be here and talk about all of those things. The question then is, why is it so important? Like when I think of these folks, or inspirational figures like this, who have not only created things, they have been masters in their own games and the things that they have done, and sometimes even in very old times, right, in historical times, but it still resonates with us today. Why is that the case? What is something special about them? It's because their ideas, and more so the way they think about the things, is something that is even more critically needed in today's time. Especially if you think about media marketing in today's world of very fragmented attention, we really need that mix of, we really need the mix of technology, magic, and being able to create something that's meaningful, and that would last longer than just the fleeting moment that we are in. So it's for that reason that how do we, in other words, in today's data and technology, and bring it together in a sense that, that would connect with the people that matter for us. Again, moving on from here. Now, the good stories are remembered. Again, I'm sure that all of us, just like my little Indrajal comics or any of the other stories, that we all have interesting stories that we have heard, listened to, and even participated in, be part of at some point, that we all remember. But it's art, it's creativity, but today we need that good dose of data and science. And how do we mix those together, right? So this is where the interesting piece comes into picture, that we have the tools and we have the technology, and it's evolving at such a fast rate that today we can create our own mix of Einstein, of Khan, and Michelangelo in ways that we would like. So that is really the power that we have at hand today. And with that kind of power, and maybe it is the power at our keyboards, or more and more so, even voice-activated technologies these days, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with. um, there comes a responsibility. And the reason why this is important, because if you go back to the stories, who here is, let me ask, who here is a fan of Star Wars? Lots of hands go up, right? So it is like the Force. It is exactly the same tools and technologies or capabilities that are available to the good guys and the bad guys. It is exactly the same thing that, that the Sith Lords would have as much as the Jedi Masters would have. The difference is who is carrying the notion of responsibility for common good in their head, right? So that is really the idea. And in our own world, when we come back from Star Wars and starships back to Earth and marketing ways, well, our problems are probably not as severe as life and death or about civilizations and intergalactic empires and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, it is important how we connect with our consumers, our customers, right? We recognize that we, as brands, as marketers, we need to make those meaningful and authentic connections because that is what really matters at the end of the day. We also know that we as human beings are rational and irrational exactly at the same time, and that is a conundrum, right? When we make choices, maybe about food or beverages, how do we make those choices? We think about those. Sometimes we would be fantastically logical, but at the same time, we make decisions in such a way that is completely illogical and would be hard for anyone to explain as to how we do those. So it is therefore, we need to be not only at the top of mind, but also be as part of the heart. Pop culture. So the point here is that we need to be present where our consumers and our customers are, and not just physically, right? Our products and services need to be there, but we also need to be there in context. So, like when a particular event is happening, or when some social phenomenon, something that moves the nation, something that everybody is talking about, or some celebratory thing, some problem, we need to be there as a part of that, as to be the part of the society, and not just be there to sell something and kind of promote our own world. So that is really very important, and it's a huge responsibility. And when we do all of those things together, we deliver on the agenda. And delivering on the agenda is not just the financial results or the Wall Street kind, which is very important. We all have responsibilities to do so, but it is also delivering the agenda for the larger ecosystem of our stakeholders. That would be not only our consumers, but the society in general, and so on and so forth. So that is the responsibility that we all need to take very seriously, and I'm sure we all do. Just in this world, there are new ways in which we can go about that. And the power of math, science, data, analytics, along with the good old storytelling, creativity, and art is what is going to take us there. There are lots of numbers on these slides, but I'm going to tell you a story because this is about storytelling. The way I think about this is, if I take my own household, right? Before coming here, I had a bit of a problem with the Wi-Fi network at my home, so I had to go log into my home router. I had not done that in a while. So when I went in there and checked, I was surprised to find out that there were something like 30 devices that were connected just in my little household. So I had my computers, had my iPads and phones, few of them, I think all of us do. But guess what? There was my AV equipment that was connected. There was all kinds of other things, including the Alexa or the voice-activated devices. Oh, and let's not forget, there was my Ring doorbell that also wanted to talk to the internet. So altogether, there are some such 30 devices, and that vastly outnumbers the human beings in my home. So that is the point here, and this is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So if there are 30 devices in my home, I would ask you to think about how many do you have, and you'll just get the picture of why this is becoming big, and it's going to get even bigger as the technology moves forward. All right, so what does this mean for the consumers, and what does this mean for the marketers? For consumers, I think if I take that large number of connected devices and so on and so forth, and it doesn't matter. We don't care how many devices or how many billions. All we know that we are using all of these interesting gadgets and services that they run on, and when we use them, we leave a whole lot of trail of data behind them. And we know that because most of these services that we enjoy are free, that data is what gets used in many senses. And we expect that people who use them, they use that responsibility and create something that's meaningful for me and you and for each of us. So that is really what the consumers expect, and therefore the personalized experiences are important. And it is not just me surmising these things here. We have data to back up that as well. So for example, I remember a couple of numbers from Accenture strategy, which showed that something like 44% of consumers globally would expect personalized experiences when they share their data. 40% of US consumers would be willing to share data if they would get something more meaningful back. So people are willing to do the business, and that is really why this matters. That, if it is 44, so let's make it 50%. So 1 in 2 of us is willing to do more business with somebody who provides that personalized experience or something that is meaningful for them contextually. That means if there are other competitors who are not doing that, they are the ones who are going to be at the losing end of the business. So I'm going to show you in a little bit lots of examples of how we do this at PepsiCo. And this is an evolving journey, so we haven't completely figured out all of it, and I don't think we ever will. It's going to be an evolution. But how we try to bring this together, I won't be able to share exact number of results and what that drove behind from business, but I'll just tell you that most of those worked phenomenally well when we really put the effort and all of these things into practice. So that is from the consumer perspective. For the marketers amongst us, this is exciting. This is as good as the time it gets. And to quote our leader, Indra Nui, she's fond of saying that she is a lifelong learner. And if you think about it, that is something that we enjoy here as well. That first of all, with so much new information, so much new data, so much good understanding of consumer behavior, and lots of interesting brands and lots of people across the globe to talk to, this is an amazing time to be a marketer. And there are these large shifts that are happening. How do we ride them and how do we shape them? That is something that's meaningful. So beyond the learning and all that fun stuff, there is also responsibility for us as marketers. And within PepsiCo, we call it data-informed marketing, generically speaking. But the idea is that all of this knowledge needs to be part of our day-to-day thinking from marketing perspective. From how do we conceive ideas which are rooted in consumer insights, how do we create briefs that would go to the agencies who would create these interesting campaigns, how do we run media, and so on and so forth. It's a large undertaking. We are on our journey for doing so, and it's not a linear path, but that's what is important here. So back to these 30-plus devices at my home, right? If anyone were to get a picture of all of that data that resides in those 30 devices, they would know all of these things about me and everybody in my household. And that is really the power. As we all know, this is a fragmented ecosystem. None of these things talk with each other, and there are silos and walled gardens and so on and so forth. So this is a bit of a vision and how we would get there or what we could do. But nevertheless, there are pieces of the puzzle that we already have at our disposal, and that is what is really interesting and critical. Now, imagine what happens when we step out of our homes and go to work or go to whatever that we need to do. We do all of those things, right? And we connect with even more things, and we use even more services, and we leave even a larger trail of data behind. And this is just a typical life cycle in somebody's a typical day. You might start with looking at what your friends are up to on Facebook, and you might ask some questions for what's the weather like, and what was the score from yesterday's game, and so on and so forth. So we do all of those things. Now, if you think about the power of today's technology with machine learning and artificial intelligence and so on and so forth, then the knowledge graph that this is creating is going to be growing exponentially faster, much faster than the rate of expansion of this universe, I would say. And that is really what is interesting in what it can help us do. So this creates lots of interesting challenges and ideas. And within PepsiCo, we are looking at shifting the ways in which we do across many of these dimensions. I won't necessarily need to talk through all of those. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So for example, we are emphasizing and creating a measurement and data-driven culture. So when we evaluate something, there are certain results that we would get. There is all types of data, but more and more, are we really looking at right measures? Are we looking at right KPIs? And going from somewhat subjective, as it used to be earlier days, to more of a really, really data-informed approach, down to the level of granularity that is possible in respective markets or situations. So that's really the type of idea here. And I would be the first one to say that this is not for one single entity to do. We are a fairly large company, but no matter how large or how small of a company and how big of a budget that you would have, this is impossible for anyone to crack. And this is where we need a partnership. We fortunately have a lot of good partners, and I'll speak about some of them. But as the cliche goes, it literally is a team sport. And we are only as good as the weakest member of our team. So we really fully acknowledge that. We make our media and platform really our partners to the point that we plan a lot of things jointly. We give them as much visibility as we could on many of these things and really roll forward that way. All right. Oops, sorry. So this is just a quick contextualized example of what we mean. So this is a US example of a database that we have on consumers. And I don't have numbers here, but if you think about these are our different North America businesses. So Pepsi Beverages, Frito-Lay North America Nutrition, and not only that. So we connect with consumers across many of these businesses as they go about what they do. But we also have a lot of people who contact us through our consumer relationships and so on and so forth. The idea is that by combining the circles or the pie together, we have a much larger view of the world, at least within the US. And our opportunity is to do that as much as possible everywhere else, everywhere else as well. So with that much of a theory and all kinds of context, I want to talk about some fun stuff. So that was about math, that was about data, that was about science. Now let us really talk about what some of these interesting stories that we were able to tell. So I have a few examples, and we'll roll some of these videos and commercials as well. But just to set up the context, this one is a US example, and I'll have some from other parts of the world as well on what we do and how this all comes together. So Pepsi, our namesake brand, we have a campaign going which we call Pepsi Generations. The idea here is, speaking of how all of these databases come together, is starting with consumer insights that we've been around for a long time. And just as much as I remember about my childhood memories, and I'm sure we all remember where we were, who we were with at certain points in times important, Pepsi has been part of those stories as well. So people tell us that, hey, why did you change, for example, a particular can design? Because I like that. When I was young, I was used to look at that and so on and so forth. So by bringing those insights, we created a really interesting campaign. So I will roll that video first, and then we'll talk about some of the numbers. So if you can go ahead with the first one, which is the Pepsi Generations campaign here. And
this is the Pepsi that your father drank. And his father drank before he met your grandmother. This is the first Pepsi on the moon.
What? No.
Okay, fine. This might be the first Pepsi on Mars. This is the Pepsi for this model. And his mom. Hi, Cindy. Show him how it's done. This is the Pepsi that was right for Ray. Uh-huh. And your Uncle Drew, who is
still breaking ankles.
This is the Pepsi that's back from the future. And back for one last ride. Boom. This is the Pepsi that Britney once popped. And this one is for the king of pop. This is the Pepsi for those who are forever fun. This is the Pepsi for every generation.
Isn't that cool? I'm sure you have seen some of those ads, and you remember, oh, it was that time. Oh, I remember this, things like that, right? So we ran this at Super Bowl, which is the American football biggest event. And, there is a lot of impressions and a lot of views that you can get by using a property like that, a Super Bowl. But in this case, it was just out of the world, the number of impressions that this generated and how it resonates, and still does. This is where, beyond the traditional media, putting it on TV and sort of a large kind of events like this, as to how does our team go about where the people are, in what context we need to kind of show them what, and so on and so forth. So that is one. But I want to show something that is really related, but in a different part of the world. This is in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, which is a very important market for us. Is the same exact consumer insight, which is to say that we have been part of the generations, but in a very different context. So Saudi Arabia is going through somewhat of a change. There is geopolitical pressures. There is oil price shock that has gone through the system. There is a new crown prince who has come out, and he has laid out the vision for 2030. So the idea is that not only have we part of the Saudi Arabian life and been there as a part of that society, but when this new generation comes along and that will realize the vision for the kingdom, we will be there as a part of that transformation as well. So here, same idea played in a very different context, and in the life of a nation that is going through a transformation. So I'm going to roll that. It is, if anyone here understands Arabic, they'll know this, but there are subtitles, so you'll be able to see that. But the tone is very different. What this is saying is very different, but at the end of the day, it is exactly the same insight. So I'm going to play that, and then we'll move to the next one. So if you can play the second video, please.
جوايا شيء يقول لي إن اليوم راح يكون يوم عظيم. شيء جواي يقول لي أتعلم وأعرف أكتر. اللي جواي محسسني إني باقي ما سويت شيء. جواي شيء يبغاني أتطور.
شيء يقول لي لا تقبل انك تسمع
لأي واحد يشككك في بكره.
لأن اللي جواي يقول حدود السماء.
كل شخصية ناجحة تلقاها جواك، لأن جواك شيء عظيم يقدر يسوي أي شيء. جواك سعودي.
So here, this I Am Saud actually became so popular, it went really viral. And this is, again, a very nice video and a nice ad, but the message, the story behind that resonated so much, to the point that it actually helped us quite a bit in how, sort of practically speaking, we manage the media and how we deliver those things. We still do. We use TV, we use digital, we use all kinds of mediums for that. In this case, our team literally actually took a little bit of a risk in how they planned TV, because rather than putting everything on TV and kind of knowing that it works, they really dialed it down. They used all the other modern ways of marketing, influencers, and knowing where people are. There are lots of interesting platforms, all of those that get quite heavily used in Saudi Arabia. What is the best way for leveraging those? So the amount of media and money that was put behind it was really, really small compared to what it actually produced. And the results were just fantastic. I don't have the stats to show here, but it created some 4.5 billion impressions. Now, here in India, we talk large numbers. In that part of the world, that is even a bigger number. Most of the campaign KPIs that you would think of, they were all blown away. So this just became like a viral sensation, and not just because it is about Pepsi, but it really resonated with what people were thinking and what the country is going through, and so on and so forth. So that's the second example. The third one here is it's actually an ad for a couple of new products. So I know it's a little bit hard to see. There is Doritos and there is Mountain Dew Ice. So those are the new Doritos Blaze. So those are the new innovations. And we released this at Super Bowl. And that also created some phenomenal set of numbers. So I'll show you the ad. This is the first time when we did something. You know, we have a lot of interesting brands and products in our portfolio. We talk about them as it's all together within portfolio, but we have never created something that actually talked to people as in one set. So this is the first time when we created actually a snack brand and a beverages brand together in a connected way, in a theme that is very interesting. Again, you might ask, well, you created a good ad and then put it out on a large property. What is so special about that, right? If you look at some of these numbers, which are mind-blowing, you would not get these types of numbers. And if you think about Super Bowl, if anyone has watched Super Bowl and some of the commercial, this is where there are tens or maybe even hundreds of ads, and everybody brings their A game. It's like everybody has thought through them, they have done all kinds of research, they have planned their media. It is very difficult to stand through from that clutter. So here we had some awesome 8.7 billion campaign impressions, and you can see some of the stats there. And guess what? We shattered the records by miles. And that last record, by the way, happens to be our own Pepsi, which was a campaign or an ad called Puppy Monkey Baby, if any of you might remember that. So the point there being that there is not only insights that go into creating these interesting stories and the ways of telling those, but also how our team went about planning the media and finding people. So we use all the tricks. There were some trailers that were released. There were bite-sized to full-sized content that was there. Who is where, what are they watching, contextual, using our own database that we talked about. So all of those things come together in creating something that stood out and still being talked about to this date, although Super Bowl, it's been a while since Super Bowl. So what I'll do is, let's quickly roll this. It's just a 1 minute, so 2 ads that played together. And you'll see, you might recognize a couple of figures in there, Morgan Freeman for sure, and how this is kind of an interesting contrast here. It's a power of a couple of things within our portfolio coming together. So if you can play the third ad, please.
Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. See, they really wanna pop me. Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come in and I gotta set it, then I gotta go and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing and then I think that he be doing cause it doesn't matter cause I'm gonna did it.
Doritos Blaze, a bold new flavor that brings the heat.
Hush your mouth. I told y'all mother, y'all can't stop me now. Listen to me now. I'm lasting 20 rounds. And if you want me, then come on get me now. Is you with me now? Then biggie bounce. I know you dig the way I switch my style.
New Mountain Dew Ice. A clear, refreshing lemon lime dew.
This is cool. This is the fun part. So awesome. So that's one set of examples. And I'll talk about a couple of other ones quickly. So, like I said, this is happening not only in our more advanced in the sense where we have a lot more data and a lot more capabilities than perhaps in some other parts of the world. Here in Asia Pacific, I want to talk about an example from Thailand, where obviously food is awesome. I'm sure most of us like Thai foods, and they are passionate about their food, and we wanted to be part of some of those conversations. So what our team did, this was a digital campaign. So I have a video, but more about the campaign and not so much an ad. That by looking, this was literally, it's called programmatic, but it's really next generation with one of our partners, Mindshare. On hundreds of 500 plus different creatives looking at different segments and optimizing it based on what is performing better, almost in real time. And this campaign also did phenomenally well. So rather than me telling you all the numbers and stuff like that, we have a very cool video that the team has put together. So let us play that, and I think it will be self-explanatory.
PepsiCo wanted to connect its brand to specific meal moments in Thailand across multiple audience groups, locations, and times in a programmatic campaign. To do this, we had to create a marketing strategy with 7,056 targeting and creative combinations covering 14 regions, 63 snacking moments per week, 2 audience segments, and across both desktop and mobile, in a world where nobody could manage more than 40. Human limitations when interfacing with DSP and DCO systems mean you cannot make this many inputs by hand. To address this challenge, Mindshare, together with YouGov, AppNexus, and Jivox, developed a world-first AI solution called Anna. Anna uses a bespoke AI to construct an integrated media and creative algorithm that powers the operations of DSP and DCO platforms. This allows Anna to manage complexity beyond regular human capabilities. Once in flight, Mindshare's FAST team made previously unreachable volumes of data-driven AI optimizations. Using a high-definition media plan with over 7,000 line items and a high-definition dynamic creative insight dashboard, resulting in over 3,000 optimizations, a 150 times increase in decisions made, all updating in real time. Results: 26% reduction in vCPM for desktop and 11% reduction in vCPM for mobile. By personalizing creative, we achieved 2.5 times the CTR of an average campaign. Mindshare and PepsiCo, moving into a new era of programmable media together.
Right. So if this doesn't say convince you about the power of bringing all the data, technology, and the chemistry together, then I don't know what else does. But this was, I'm very proud of what we did here. Kudos to the team. This is one of the best case examples that we have. That again, an example of where we can create things in different parts of the world and hopefully lift and shift that and use that elsewhere. Just quickly, a couple of things. Personalization. I know it's a big buzzword. But we have our own share of experiences and things that we are learning. So for one of our brands called Lay's Kettle Cooked, which is Lay's chips, but more deli-style chips, really very nice. We created working with a couple of our partners, Facebook and Oracle Data Cloud, which is also used to be called Datalogics before, on some segments. And here are some examples. They are not only demographic segments, but also based on behaviors. For example, people who buy our brands, obviously they're very valuable for us, but those who either stop buying or those who buy into the category but not our brands, those are also very important that we need to speak to. So by doing, understanding who these people are, knowing where they are and where to find them is one thing, but being able to speak to them in ways that would be interesting is another. So we created many interesting ways of looking at how do we want to speak to, some that would appeal to these sets of folks, some that may not, and essentially serve them those ads or find them in the context, and if there are multiple options, choose the right ones. So this is also something that worked really well, and even if it's personalization, it's not one-to-one, but nevertheless, I hope it makes the point. Lastly, here in India, I want to talk about a very interesting example that our team did. So Manisha Khanna and Rajat from our team are here. Kudos to them for doing this. We're using insights from market research, consumer panels, and lots of other data signals that we have available in this market. They created multiple segments to find the core audience here, which is the young athlete, people who would be interested in Gatorade from their sporting activities and so on and so forth, and scaling that up using some interesting math and sort of lookalike type of modeling and so on, and contextually targeting those people. That just drove phenomenal numbers in terms of actual volume, besides the KPIs that we look at from campaign and media perspective as well. So that's yet another example of where this has come together, and hopefully this gives you a story here that this is possible to do pretty much everywhere, as long as you put similar principles and use the best tools, technologies, partners that are available to you. So with that, I just want to say that this is a journey that continues. It's not that we are done, as I said. The interesting thing, and I feel very fortunate to be part of PepsiCo in this, is that with our scale and the portfolio that we have, PepsiCo is like a natural laboratory. We can do these things at different places, learn from those, and then lift and shift, which we need to be doing even more of. And that is where my role from a global media and content capability perspective comes into picture. And in this, we'll continue this, and I hope that at some point I'll come back here and tell you how this evolved and kind of continuing the journey, show you some more cool examples, and listen from you folks as well. So that is all I had. I want to thank you all for sharing part of your morning with me. I want to thank the AdTech team as well as my team here for making this happen, giving this opportunity. Hopefully this is useful. And I don't know if we have time for Q&A. I know that I ran a little bit over, but I'll stick around here for a little bit, and we'll be happy to kind of talk about anything in particular if that is of interest. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kulkarni.